Good morning, brothers and sisters. How are you today? Well, it's a great privilege and pleasure for me to introduce this speaker today. He's a friend, a brother, co-worker, and somebody I admire greatly in so many ways. And of course, he's a native son of this country. One of our best exports, actually. And, but Great Britain's loss is America's gain. So many of you know him from when he used to work here in various fields, carb leader, business, witnessing, fundraising, whatever. And the one thing that comes to my mind whenever I see Dr. Balcomb is the word enthusiasm always somehow creeps in. Enthusiasm. He's a person with boundless enthusiasm, it seems to me. And he took over his responsibility in the United States at a very difficult time for our movement worldwide as well as in the United States. And he had to, working together with Dr. Kim in America, had to overcome and deal with many difficult and delicate situations. And I think we're seeing, those of you who may follow the website and announcements or activities from America, step by step we see some very good things happening. And of course the most recent event was through Mother opening the International Peace Education Center in Las Vegas. And I know that a lot of effort was put into that. I want to formally introduce Dr. Balcomb for those of you who may not know him, because some of you watching on the internet may not be too familiar with him. So I will just simply introduce him from his bio. He was born in Nigeria in 1957, educated in England, and he's back actually. One of the reasons was to celebrate the 40th anniversary of his, with his alumni from Seven Oaks School, is that right? That's right. So, you may have seen some pictures with some of his colleagues. And then he joined the Unification Church, like many others from this country, while traveling in California in 1976, while on a holiday in the United States. And he was about to take up a scholarship to study medicine at Oxford University, but I guess God called him to higher things. He is a doctor right now, but not the kind of doctor he was planning to be originally. And he then supported the Washington Monument Campaign in 1976 in September. He became the president of CARP and the youth movement here in the United Kingdom in the mid-1980s, and from 1990 taught seminars in the newly integrated East European nations and also in Russia. We actually met and worked together in Russia. Many happy memories from that time. He returned to the United States in 1992 to attend the UTS, Unification Theological Seminary, graduating with a Master's of Divinity in 1994. In 2009, he became the first graduate of the UTS Doctor of Ministry program. And he now teaches courses on interfaith and ecumenical dialogue to new doctoral students. Dr. Balcomb was blessed in October 1982 in marriage blessing with his wife Fumiko. And I'd like to ask Fumiko-san to stand and be recognized. I believe Fumiko was working in England, is that correct? In Scotland, in Glasgow, all right. And that's why she has a slight accent about it. So, and I'd like to also acknowledge Michael's mother, Pam Balcomb. Mrs. Pam Balcomb, would you mind being recognized? So Dr. Balcomb's family lives in Austining, New York, and they are the proud parents of 5 children. 5 children, wow. And he became then the president of our movement, the director of our movement in the USA in March 2013. And we're very happy to welcome him here. He's very renowned as a lecturer, divine principle lecturer, public speaker, and many of our brothers and sisters have benefited greatly from the lectures that he did while he was still here in the UK. And I know some people still using those from way back in the earlier days of technology. And so let's really welcome Dr. Balcomb here as a speaker.
You've heard my topic this morning is the true lighthouse keeper, and you may wonder what that means. Some of you may not have seen a lighthouse very recently. Does anyone not know what they are? Last October, Fumiko and I had an opportunity to take a few days off, and we went down to the Outer Banks of North Carolina on the eastern coast of the United States. And that area is noted for two things: shipwrecks and lighthouses. And we learned that actually there were two types of people who would man the lights along that coast. One type were the lighthouse keepers, and their job, of course, was to keep the shipping safe. And you can see those lighthouses with their candy stripes up and down the coast. And of course, that's very well and fine. But I learned that there was another kind of light keeper as well, and they would put lights in the most dangerous places of all, hoping to tempt the ships onto the shore to be wrecked so that they could be pillaged and the spoils taken. So you can imagine for those out at sea on a dark night, desperate for some guidance about where to go and how to find safety. And then you would see the light shining from far away, but you'd have to ask yourself, is that a lighthouse? Or is that some sort of invitation to ruin and disaster? And I think the same kind of thing happened along the Kentish shore as well. And of course, it seems horrible to think that people could be so wicked as to misuse the trust of people in a desperate situation to find safety. So I was thinking about that a bit, and thinking about my light that I share with people. Is it, in fact, in the eyes of God, the true light that invites people into His presence and to find solace and safety? Or am I sometimes shining for myself in such a way that if people follow that, they may not be guided to safety at all? In fact, they may get into grave difficulty. And you know, when you think about that a little while and you look back over your life, you may come to feel some regret, some thought. You know, there were times when I didn't give a good example. I didn't lead people to God. I led them either to myself or just astray, not always intentionally, sometimes just by neglect, just by being careless. As Jack mentioned, on Thursday, I had the opportunity to meet up with 5 friends from my school days. I graduated school in 1975, and so this year is the 40th reunion. And you may wonder how that came about. You may not wonder, but I will tell you anyway. About 6 or 7 months ago, our founder, True Mother, started emphasizing to us the importance of personal ministry. What she said basically was, our church, our movement will never flourish as long as we think that the task of ministry belongs only to the pastors, only to the ministers, or only to me. In fact, she said, every one of us is commissioned by God to minister to others, to teach others, to show other people the way to go. Now you may think, well, I'm not qualified. I don't know the way myself all the time. But God knows that. And what He's looking for is a willingness to do something. To do something to shed a light into another person's life. Now that's sometimes a scary thing because we may feel, I'll be rejected. I'll be dismissed. People will say, well, who are you to tell me anything about how I should live my life? But what I've discovered as I pastor around America is that everybody has 2 things. One, they have something to give, and also inside us we have a desperate need to receive the love and guidance of God, but it's very hard to receive it directly. It's much easier for God to do it through the ministry of others. So later on we'll find out in this room if this is true or not, because you'll be participating, as I said, in a ministry experiment. And anyway, last Thanksgiving, an American holiday, marked largely by overconsumption of turkey and pumpkin pie, and I had done my duty of eating an enormous amount of both. And I was sitting on the couch, exhausted and in almost diabetic shock from having eaten so much sugar, and feeling pretty miserable with myself, actually. Feeling, and maybe some of you have had that feeling, I am a lazy, no good for nothing. It might have been that Fumiko was whispering in my ear words to that effect as well. But anyway, I got that feeling, I really am not much good. And suddenly, out of nowhere, the voice of God comes. It comes sometimes in an unexpected place. He said, yeah, you're absolutely right. But do you want to do something about it or just moan about it for the rest of the day? Actually, I really wanted to moan about it for the rest of the day. But when God asks you if you want to do something, it's often a good idea to see where that leads you. So I thought, okay, Lord, I'll do something. So he said, okay, go upstairs right now, sit down at your desk and wait for further instructions. Dutifully walked upstairs, sat down, and immediately God said, I want you to write down the names of everybody you know, because I need you to bring light into their lives. I immediately started to think, no, God, just 5 seconds ago you were telling me I'm a lazy good for nothing. He said, put that on the side for one moment, just start writing. So I start writing. And after a few minutes, I had maybe 110 names. Of course, some were easy, my wife, my children, my family, my relatives. But then I started to think a little bit more, and going all the way back to the time when I was in school in England. And most of these people, of course, I didn't know where they were or how to reach them or anything like that, but I just wrote down the names. When I finished 2 pages, I felt God's permission to stop. I was about to get up from the desk. Not so fast, he said. Not so fast. Now, I want you to find the one person on that list of 100 that I would like you to contact today to share something. So I looked at the list, and of course, at first I thought, well, maybe I should choose Fumiko because she's right downstairs. That will be easy, but somehow God wouldn't let my finger go on that. And it took a while, and finally the name came of one of my friends from school. I hadn't seen for 40 years. Giles, his name is. And God said, okay, I want you to contact Giles. You mean like soon? Next week maybe when I get... No, now. Could I go to the toilet first? No, actually, now. Okay, Lord. So, how do you contact someone you haven't seen for 40 years? You don't know anything about them. Of course, you use Facebook, right? So, I was kind of reluctant, feeling, I hope they're not on Facebook. This has gone on far enough. But I looked up his name, and then Giles. There he is in Deal, Kent. Yeah, I think that's where he lives. But I don't want to send a friend request. That's too difficult. I'll poke him. So, Facebook, you can poke people. And I simply poked him with Giles. This year's our 40th graduation anniversary. Long time. Quickly closed the computer lid and scurried off to bed. And the next morning, kind of hoping there would be no response, I opened my computer. Oh no, he's responded. And he responded and said, Mike, long time. It's really 40 years. And, he said, no, there's no reunion, but why don't we make one? And so it came to be that we gathered on Thursday right next to the House of Commons. One of them's wife is an MP, and we had our 40th reunion. And it was so good. It was so good. I don't know if you've ever met someone who you haven't spoken to for 40 years, but it's really quite an extraordinary experience. We had an opportunity to share, what have you done with your life in the last 40 years? And in the beginning, people were very kind of formal. One was a lawyer, one was a big finance guy. after I heard one of those, I said, guys, this is not important at all. Are you married? Do you have children? What's really going on in your life? And then the atmosphere changed and we began to discuss much deeper things. And, of course, I have a different story than them. I didn't become an MP. I didn't become a lawyer or a financier. I joined a small, unpopular church and went away to America and married someone from another continent, and I'm as happy as can be. And it was really a good opportunity to share the things that are really important to me, and I think important to everybody, which is how do you find your peace with God? We're all exactly the same age. I won't tell you what it is, but it rhymes with 57. Actually, it's 58 now. And it was really a good experience. And as I was coming back, I thought, I should do more of this. I should make more effort to start the relationship that will allow me to share what I believe to be really important. Yesterday, as I was at a 50th wedding anniversary, I talked to my uncle, Bob. It was his anniversary. And we were talking about the grievous situation in the world, in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, Iraq, Africa. And he's a good man, a man of faith. But he said, how can you keep any kind of optimism that it will change? It seems like the troubles have been with us forever. Surely we should just give up and make the best of it and make our way in the world as it is. We just sang a hymn that said, come soon, heaven, right? How many of us really believe that heaven is coming? People have been believing that for thousands of years. They've gone to their graves disappointed. What gives us the confidence I actually have that heaven can come soon, now, in our lifetime? And I think the first part of that is to recognize where we stand and what we have. And I'd like to share with you a favorite quote from the Reverend Moon. As some of you know, many of you know, in his lifetime, Reverend Moon spoke a lot. And when his words were transcribed into books of sermons, it came up to more than 1,000 books. And after he passed, Mrs. Moon took a good look at this vast collection and thought to herself, it would be very difficult for most people to make a dent in that. And so she decided to try to collect together some of the highlights, the best. And the first book, which many of you have, I saw Rosemary had a copy, is called the Chansangyang, or the Heavenly Scripture. The second book is a book of speeches that Reverend Moon gave in public. And the third book, which we're working on the translation in America right now, is called the Champomakyang. And it's really a story of Father and Mother Moon's journey of faith, how they met God, and how they came to understand the mission that God gave them to try to bring peace to the world. So I have my notes on my iPhone. It's not that I'm bored and I'm sending texts now. So, and this is Reverend Moon in the first person. I am alone. My work is like a lighthouse that shines in the night. A lighthouse is important to those who travel at night by sea, but nobody regards a lighthouse as important during the day. That's true, right? Daytime, it's not so relevant. Especially the kind of day that exists in today's world, which is lit by the glow of a false light, a false sun. And nobody in that day of false light, daytime, likes the keeper of the true lighthouse. You and I are playing that role in this day that is lit by false light, by false sun. Nobody understands the true lighthouse keeper. So how? How can we change our lighthouse's night beacon into the daytime's true sun? It is only through restoration by indemnity and prayer, by focusing God's true light on humanity, our work will transform into God's original, eternal sunlight. But how difficult would it be to change a lighthouse beacon into the noonday sun? I'm thinking about this. Somehow these words really deeply move me. When you think of a lighthouse, the true lighthouse, of course you think of a dark and stormy night, right? That's how the novel opens. It was a dark and stormy night. The waves are crashing against the lighthouse. And the lighthouse keeper is keeping his light trained out there on the waves. And it's a dangerous job, a difficult job. It may be one that requires you to give up contact with your family for a while and other things, but at least everyone could acknowledge that's important. It is important that that light is shining. But come the daytime, and the waves have subsided, and the sun is up, and people can see where they're going, then of course the lighthouse can be ignored. But what if the world as we see it, with its conflicts and its struggles, its heartbreak, the meanness of people to each other, what if that is not actually the true world? That is not the way we are supposed to live as the sons and daughters of God, but actually something different, something false. Pretty much every religion teaches that, actually. That at the beginning of human history, we went astray, we took a wrong course, and the consequences of that bad decision, whether you call it the fall or however you describe it, are still with us today. So much so that even our best and brightest, our philosophers, our politicians, our academics and professors actually do not know how to find the way to peace. Think of Robin here, who's doing such sterling work with the Universal Peace Federation. I worked there with Jack myself for many years, and we met some really great people, prime ministers, really wonderful religious leaders, but almost all of them confessed at some point or another, really, we don't know what to do. We've tried, we've given our best effort, and somehow we keep sliding backwards. And I think that is actually the fundamental, difficult, hard truth that we need to face, that we will continue to slide backwards unless and until we find the true light of God. And that is not easy. Actually, God himself, as Father Moon describes in the unification principle, has been striving for thousands of years to bring his children back. So even for Almighty God, it's not an easy thing to bring the light of truth to the world. Think about that for a moment. If God is Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, and can create whole stars and universes, why can he not make it clear to us that we're heading the wrong way? If you're a parent, you already have some of the answers from your experience with your own children. It isn't enough just to tell them what the truth is. It isn't even enough to try to demonstrate through your own actions what love and truthfulness are. They also have to come to their own realization, and you cannot do anything about that. You can't do it for them, no matter how much you may try. And if you try too hard, you may actually block them from that all-important discovery. And Reverend Moon came to realize this is God's agony. He wants to see his children revived, restored, happy, but he cannot interfere with the most important thing, which is our portion of responsibility. Father Moon described our portion as very small. He said if you think of all of God's will as 100%, our portion is only 5%. But later on he said, well, really it's 0.0005, but let's call it 5 for the sake of argument, which means that 95% of the task actually belongs to God. But God cannot complete that without our doing our 5%. And this truth came from before the beginning of humanity. It was always God's plan that we would have a portion of our own responsibility to love others, to help each other, to guide each other, to make it through life successfully and happily. The struggles we face are not just a consequence of the fall, not just because we separated from God. There are always going to be struggles in life because the things that are worthwhile require effort. And sometimes we have to face failure the first time round, the second time round. And in that dark moment, God is expecting that we will help each other. He's not going to come and intervene himself. Which brings us to this point. How do I, this morning, become a true lighthouse keeper? Because I'm sure if God told me, he wants to tell you too. He hopes we will be able to do that every single day. There's not a single day that God doesn't have someone that he's going to bring you in contact with. He would like you to help and to love. You may think, well, okay, Mike, that sounds good, but let's be realistic. We're not perfect people. Our church is small, and it's not perfect. Let's wait until we have something that we can really be proud of. Then we'll go out and share the good news. Brothers and sisters, family, it doesn't work that way. If we wait for that illusion of perfection and completion, we will never help anybody. There will always be something else to do before we do that responsibility. So what I wanted to share with you today is that to God, it doesn't matter where you are right now. He's not waiting for you to become perfect, or even better. Actually, the way to do that is to begin this task of being the true lighthouse keeper, the one who shines the light of love and grace into the lives of others. And so now we come to the interactive portion of this sermon, because I would like you to divide into pairs. It can be the person you came in with or someone you don't know. And you're going to ask each other a very simple question. And I'd like you to address it in complete honesty. You won't go anywhere else outside this room unless you choose. And you'll start by just meditating for about 30 seconds. And then the first partner will ask the second, who would God like you to shine light into their life today? You may not know the answer, but if you ask the question, God will tell you. There's someone, even today, whose life you could brighten. And how are you going to do it? And we're talking about today, before midnight tonight. Not tomorrow. God will have a different person for you tomorrow. But today, is there somebody whose life you can improve? And when the first person has shared, then it's the second person's turn. And I will be seeking for 3 volunteers to share what God told them from the podium here, and then we'll be done. Simon sent me a strict email. Don't go on longer than 3 hours because there's many other meetings today. So I'll be good, Simon. All right, so you all understand the assignment. If you don't have a partner, please raise your hand, and one will be provided. So the first thing is you pause a little bit, breathe, and then you ask, whose life can you brighten today and how? All right, anyone not have a partner? We're all good? Mickey, you don't have a partner? I will be your partner. I'll come and sit. I forgot to say, this is a 5-minute exercise. All right, everybody. It's really good to hear you sharing with each other. That's what you come to church for, right? To let your heart speak and to hear the voice of God, hopefully. So I called on 3 people to volunteer, and it was a little bit one-sided. And the first one was Helena Stout, so she's going to come and share about what God put in her heart today. Please, let's give her a round of applause. Just 1 minute.
I thought I had an hour. Okay, I think it's a good idea. It's excellent. I can tell by the response how wonderful it was and what people really appreciated about it. And so we just started and we were supposed to do 30 seconds, but Joanna already had someone. She just said, and she said the person. So I was like, oh, okay, right. So I thought, well, I don't know, because I had an experience like that with, like what Mike said a few weeks ago, and I started writing to people already, so it was already in my mind. I thought, who will it be? So then I just meditated for 30 seconds. First of all, I saw this person that looked like Marilyn Monroe. I thought, oh gosh, it can't be her. Then, waited the 30 seconds, and immediately, just 30 seconds, my mom's face flashed up. Because my mom, when she was young, Joanna said, did she look like Marilyn Monroe? I said, no, she looked like Princess Elizabeth when she was young. She was very glamorous, my mom. And I thought my mom was a princess in my eyes. So I thought I have to talk to my mom. That's my experience.
And the next willing volunteer was Marshall D'Souza. And here he comes.
Thank you, Mike. I know Mike a long time, and was my wife's leader, couple leader. We're also good friends. I was genuinely moved by Mike's sermon today. I'm not always, to be honest with you, I'm not always moved by people's sermons, up here, but I was genuinely very moved, and I think it's a very good sermon, and I think it will help us all. Anyway, I was sharing with Patrick. As I prayed for a few seconds before we talked, someone's name came to my mind. Someone who has actually come to one or two things. He's a young Ugandan young man called Willington. Some of you may have met him. I think Simon's met him, yeah. Anyway, I thought about him, and I feel a little bit responsible for him, because when I met him, his wife, who cheated him into coming to this country, she married him so she could come into the UK, and then she left him. And I met him at that time when he was going through a big struggle. And somehow we have one thing in common, and that's football, soccer. He's an Arsenal supporter and I'm an Everton supporter, so we used to watch football together. Anyway, I've kind of lost track with him for some time now. And I think, as some of you know, I had an operation and I haven't gone to football matches for a long time and so on. So I have tried to get hold of him, but I feel today, having listened to Mike's sermon, I'm definitely going to call him, and I'm going to meet him, and I'm going to really talk to him and share a bit more of the light towards him, because I feel he's going through a hard patch, and he needs a bit of light at this time, and I want to be the light keeper for him. Thank you.
And our third volunteer is George Ostapko.
Hi, brothers and sisters. It's very interesting what Mike mentioned about the lighthouse. Actually, in my situation, the friend, a long lost friend really, contacted me. It's about 3 or 4 years ago, and his father ran a fish business. That brings back memories. Father always encourages fishing, and he was into salmon because my friend moved to Canada. Then from Canada he moved to California, and he's often been in touch with me, and I've sent him clips of being a musician. I've sent him clips of all the musical activities I do, even with Second Generation, because I just simply love working with Second Generation. But not to get off the tangent, so I'm going to contact him because there's another friend through him that I met. I didn't share with Tom when we discussed this, but I just brought back memory of another friend called Bill, who I do need to contact, because we had a little team going in my school, and we were always up to a little bit of mischief. You know what it's like when you're being kids. So just to recap on where we left off, our times have changed and what changes we can make. And that's it, because I think my time's up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, it's a big realization, but an important one, to recognize that in each of us, God has already placed His divine light, because we're His sons and daughters. Nothing can ever change that. And on that day when we stand before God to give a final accounting of our lives here, I bet you he won't ask whether you have a PhD or whether you became a millionaire or what kind of work you did when you went to the office. He'll be much more interested and wanting to share about who did you love. Occasionally, God has given me a real precious gift. I've met someone who said, I studied the principle through your video. Or a few days ago, someone came up to me and said, do you know you saved my life? When I was a little boy, you pulled me out of a lake when I was drowning. I don't remember any of these things, of course, and that's a rather dramatic example. But just imagine what it would be like if you could be thinking each day, I will be the voice and the conscience, the heart of God with the other people I meet. I won't just think about myself and my difficulties and what I want to do. Instead, in a phrase that Father Moon used to use all the time, I really will live for the sake of other people. I really will think that God can work through me to bring miracles and change. If we could really do that, this world with all its struggles and difficulties will all be made right. All the problems come from the breakdown of true love, true communication between us and our Heavenly Parent. And the only way to bring it back so that heaven can come quickly is by restoring that, and we can start today. Please join me in a closing prayer. Our most loving Heavenly Parent, please help us to see ourselves as you see us. You don't see us as sinful, struggling people, not at all. You see us as your lovely sons and daughters. But you are frustrated sometimes because you see that we don't find the happiness that you want for us, because we're not willing to invest in the happiness and the lives of others enough. And there are others who can make us happy and joyful by sharing your light also. We don't need to worry about these things. We just need to open our hearts and minds and truly be willing to give. So many give more than we, but that's okay. Today, let's think about those who came to our minds, and each day continue to look to bring light into the lives of others. Not so that we look good or look that we're better. No, Father, so that we can really bring joy and healing and reconciliation into this broken world. We think of all the countries at war with each other, those who are sick, hungry. There are a million problems besetting the human race, but we know in our hearts it's not a lack of resources or intelligence or power that is the problem. It's a lack of love that is truly yours. Please help us to live the way we're created to do, and to bring life and love into the hearts of others. We'd all like to offer you a moment of our prayer and appeal for forgiveness and the ability to give more. And I offer this prayer in the name of the Balcomb Blessed Central Family, and let all the families here together say amen and adieu. Thank you, everybody.